Good morning, everybody. Shell Lake School Superintendent Todd Felhofer is our very special guest today, Thursday, April 6th, 2023. For DrydenWire.com, I'm Ben Dryden, and we are streaming this month's live chat with, in this case, Superintendent Felhofer. It's the first Thursday of the month we kind of have a random guest on, and I've been wanting to have Todd on for quite a while. Obviously, being the new superintendent, I wish we had time to get you on early, but I can't wait to learn about you. And just to let everybody know, if you're watching this and you have to go for some reason, we'll put a recording of this we'll stay on our Facebook page, but it'll be on our YouTube channel, on our website, and on Twitter later today, even though I don't think anybody around here really uses Twitter. And if you have a question for Superintendent Felhofer, or if you have a topic that you would like for us to discuss, please feel free to let us know in the comments during today's show. Todd, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing very well. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I wish we could have had you on earlier. That's my bad. Sorry about that.
Not a problem.
Okay, thank you. So there's so much I want to talk to you about. Shell Lake. So I live in Spooner, but Shell Lake, that's my town, man. That's where I grew up. I went to school in Shell Lake. My brother's still there. My mom and my dad are in the Shell Lake School District. I love Shell Lake. I'm trying to find a way to move there, but unfortunately, there's no place down there that I can find to move down there. But I love it, so I have so much I want to talk to you about. But we want to, since this is the first time that you are on, we want to get to know you, kind of your bio and who you are. But even before that, the election just happened. Was there a school board, race? Was there a school board election in Shell Lake?
There was a school board election, and we did have two seats. Both of them were running unopposed, but we did have a registered write-in that got their papers in just at the last bit. Sure. Today they'll be doing the official canvass to finalize those results, but Nicole Timms and Scott Smith both were reelected.
Oh, okay, I see. So there's only two people, their names on the ballot for two positions, but then of course the write-ins.
They were the two.
Yeah. Got it. All right. So before we get into the state of Shell Lake in terms of the school district, how did the year go? And also, how did the year go for you being the first year as a superintendent in Shell Lake? For people who don't know you very well, tell us about you. Where were you born? Where were you raised? Where'd you grow up?
I'm a native of Marshfield, central Wisconsin, and went off to college and thought I was going to be a city manager and decided that's not what I wanted to be. Went to UW Eau Claire. Then
hold on, I got to stop you already. Who, at what age did you decide, I think city manager? You have to make these decisions like around 17, 18 years old. What 17-year-old says, I know, city manager?
Well, I think I was a tad older than that when I had that epiphany, but it was kind of blending business and political science, which were two areas I had interest in. I thought, well, let's marry them together, and maybe there's a career there. As it turned out, it wasn't. It just wasn't as appealing when you get to the end of the road as what it was at the beginning. And I'd also had thought about education, and at that point, I decided I went to UW Oshkosh then to get my teacher certification, and from there, I taught 12 years middle school in the suburban Milwaukee area.
What did you teach?
I taught language arts, social studies, literature. I also did work with at-risk students, so a little bit of everything.
What is language arts? Is that like different ways to swear?
What? I would be well qualified probably for that, but no, it's more of the English and the writing and reading and that area.
Wow. All right, so you did that for, what did you say, 10 years?
12 years.
12 years. Then what?
Then I became an elementary principal in Marshfield, and I was there for 16 years. So I went back to the hometown and actually ended up principal of a building I went to as a student.
Weird.
I was still a teacher there from when I was in her class.
So, oh, wow. By the way, what made you want to be a principal? I mean, because education is a little bit different than some from the business world, and you always want to move up, right? You want to be this, then you want to be an assistant manager, then a store manager, then a district manager, then a regional director of operations. That's how it works, right? But education is a little different. A teacher can be a teacher for their whole career. It's like, I have zero interest in being a principal or any other level. Why did you, after 12 years, go, that principal gig, that looks pretty good?
Well, I think, having gone from my undergrad, looking at city management, being in somewhat of a leadership role, it was kind of a natural extension at that point. And the idea too, for me, I always looked at it in the classroom. I can really affect those kids. So what, 20, 25 kids? Well, as a principal now, you have an impact on an entire building. And
Mm,
then that the next step, obviously, to district level, now you're impacting on all those kids. And so I always kind of looked at it as a way to have a greater impact on students' education.
mm. How long were you then the principal there?
16 years.
Okay. I think you already said that. 16. Well, so at this point, it's been almost 30 years in education. And what year about was this? So when
Well,
you were at 16 years as
I,
principal.
that would have been I went to then I went to Greenwood after Marshfield. So then I was the previous 7 years I was the superintendent and high school principal in Greenwood. So
Okay,
this
so
is
you
actually my 36th year in
okay,
public
so
education.
you were a principal. So you were a teacher for 12, then you were a principal for
16.
16, and then you decided
One
next
more
step
step. Yep.
superintendent, and you said where was it?
Greenwood, which is
Where's
in
that?
Clark County, about 130 miles south and a little east.
And
Uh,
why there? Any ties there, or they had an opening and they're the ones that
Well,
hired
there was
me?
an opening. That's always a good starting point. It was also not too far from Marshfield. It's about 25, 30 miles west of Marshfield.
So you didn't
So,
have to move.
well, but I chose to because I
Oh,
felt it was important to be in the community. Um, if you're going to be the leader of the school, I think it's rather important you're a part of that community. And that's just my personal belief. I know many people don't do it that way, and that's not necessarily wrong. But I just felt I needed to be in the community in which
how
I
how
was
big was uh how big was that school district? And I don't
about
know how you
300.
determine that. Is it student,
Yeah,
the total
students,
student?
about 375 students.
375. Is so that seems like a smaller ish.
It is
How
quite a small district.
how many are in Shell Lake?
We're about six and a quarter right now.
Okay. Really? I remember when I went to school there, I graduated in I think 95. I think we graduated, we had like 40 kids in our class. I think so. So, yeah, holy cow. Wait, six, oh, that's in the total. I see. I'm just thinking like in one school or in one grade. So 625, that's K through 12
4K through 12.
or 4K through 12. Okay. All right. So you were the superintendent there and you said 6 years,
Seven,
7 years,
7 years.
and you decide, I hate this place. I'm out of here.
Well, no, it wasn't a case of I hate this place.
Okay.
But I think, at certain points in your life, you just kind of realize that I want to stretch out a little further. Obviously, 375 students. Was looking to get to a little bit larger district. Um, Also looking to kind of move back into one position where I was a district administrator and high school principal in Greenwood. And that, I mean, I got to a point where I didn't think I was effective in either one, or I shouldn't say that, as effective as I would like to be in either one. And so it's like, I'd really like to get back to being a superintendent where I'm working with everybody and trying to improve the district and become more efficient, and so that was part of it. My wife and I also had a desire to move into the Northwoods area, and so that was a factor, but a little bit down the list. But it was just the right time for us to make a step, personally and professionally.
Why the North Woods, as you say? Because you're from northern Wisconsin, but it's Northwoods is different. Any particular reason? Did you vacation up here and go, man, I freaking love that place. If there's ever a
Well,
superintendent job up in that area, I'm totally
well,
going to look into it.
well, we've my wife and I have loved going up to Duluth and up to Grand Marais. We love, then you're driving through this whole area on
Yeah.
the way, of course, and so we had kind of longed to could we get closer, and with not any particular landing spot in mind, it just was a situation where I saw the job posted for Shell Lake, and I went. I've seen the sign. I've on 53. I've driven by it a lot of times. I
Right.
had never ever been to Shell Lake. So this was, in fall of, whatever it would have been, 22. And I went, or fall of 21, excuse me. Let's go check it out. And we drove into Shell Lake, and we were just like, this is just what a cute little place. We drove around. We drove up to Spooner and went, wow, this is really cool. Can't believe we've never taken that turn and checked it out. And I'm
Well,
like,
yeah, there's not a lot of reason for a lot of people if you're just driving past to, and there's not a bunch of signs like, "Hey, we got this and this and this." But yeah, it's easy to miss.
yeah.
So you actually, so you went to Shell Lake. You drove. You and your wife went to Shell Lake.
Around.
Drove around. Was that before you even applied, or
Was
I'm
before I
applying and
even
now I should
applied.
probably go
It was-
check the place out?
Well, yeah, it's like, okay, is this a place that we'd be interested in? And so we drove around, like I said, Spooner, and we just went, yeah. Now, then I went about, now I need to learn a little bit more about the school district. And
Sure.
so, there's some things you can go onto the DPI websites and you do a little, Google searching and a few things, and you can start to get at least a sense of what the district's about. And so everything I was seeing was, yeah, this looks very much in line with where I'd like to be. And so, then you put your name in, and
Go from
as
there.
they say, the rest
So
is history.
yeah, so you really get when you look at those like DPI and report cards and all the information. Look, I could look at it, and I could just see certain numbers, but they're just numbers. You probably can look at some and get more insight just because I'm familiar with this. So when you say that you went in on DPI and got some information, what did you see that was attractive? Was there something that stood out like, wow, that's really impressive?
Yeah, I think what you look for is some consistency in the numbers. That it's not peaks and valleys.
Sure.
And obviously looking driving by the facility, it was like, wow, looks very nice. It's more modern looking, and I think those are things that you're looking at. You look at staffing, and what kind of what staff do they have? And I think like, wow, they have a couple of counselors, and there's tech ed and some of those other programs, and you see their full-time positions, and you're like, all right, there's a commitment to those programs. Versus, okay, we have a half-time person. Well, I guess it's better than zero, but is there a commitment to that program?
So when you go in, and I'm sure there were other people that applied for this, and whoever I'm assuming is it the school board that does the interviews for this? I think.
Well, they did some of the interviewing, and then there was like the administrative team, and
Okay.
then there was like a public forum where people just ask you questions. And
Sure. So when you're going about this, do you ever feel, because there's a lot of people that will go to a job and they will say anything to get the job. Usually that's more out of desperation. But when you're going into it, do you feel as though you have to answer questions in a certain way? Or, listen, the only way this is going to work is if I just tell you exactly what I think and what I feel. And if that fits for you, great. If not, that's probably better for everybody then.
Absolutely. I am what I am. And I think you have to answer the questions honestly, because eventually it's going to come out, and why do you want to put yourself in that position to have to explain, well, back at that interview, what I said? Well, it was just to get the job. Well, I don't think you can be an ethical person and be a real leader and engender trust among people if that's your approach to things. So,
well, that's how I got my wife to marry me. I just totally lied about everything, and then after she married me, then the real Ben came out, and now she's stuck with me. That's how we do it. So it was your first year. Going into this first year, do you have kind of like a mental checklist or okay, this is going to be a successful year or a good year? And if you have those kind of thoughts, what does that look like? What does a successful first year look like for you?
Well, I developed really a 100-day sort of plan that I shared with the board in terms of, all right, because obviously I started on July 1. And so, from July to September, what did I want to be working on during the summer? And then, chunking the year up with specific things. Obviously, your first year in the community, your first year in the school, a lot of times you're listening, you're asking questions, you're observing. And because you have to begin to, understand the situation, you need to start to make make connections with personnel, and it's about relationship building and
Right.
trying to figure out, how things have been done, why have they been done that way. Sometimes I think leaders get caught with, you charge in and, well, why are you doing that way? We have to fix that. Well, you might want to find out why they're doing it that way, because there might be a really good reason for it.
Yeah.
And you go, oh, I get it now. I don't think we're going to change that, versus, changing it and then have to go walking it back going, all right, well, I guess I won't touch that again. And so, that's been a lot of the year. But again, I think when you come in and you start to, look at things, you start to see things that that do need to be addressed, that maybe for whatever reason haven't been dealt with efficiently or effectively.
So
Like
when you go into this, so David Bryden, he's your predecessor. He was on our show a few times. I got to know him personally. I like the guy a lot. I mean, he's just a great person. I honestly don't know how to evaluate a superintendent. I have no idea. You could be like the worst superintendent on the planet. I like, how do I know? I mean, unless you do something egregious that gets in the news or something dumb. I don't know how that stuff works, so I don't know. I'm assuming David did a good job. I really enjoyed him, and when he was on our shows and our conversations. But people don't like change. So you get there, superintendent, or now former superintendent for Lake School District, David Bryden, he's gone. You're there. It's a little awkward. Were you received well, or is there a little bit of, wait, you're not David though, so you just stay over there?
No, I think the reception's been very positive, not only at the school level but even in the community. And I think sometimes, when move into a smaller community, and again, Greenwood was quite small too. You sort of have that, you're not from here, what's important for the person who's coming to the community is, yeah, I get that, but do you get the sense from people that you could be one of them? And some places you don't get that feeling. You're not one of us, and you're never going to be. Where Shell Lake has been very welcoming, and the people in the community that my wife and I have met have been, gracious, and, oh, we're so glad you're here, and if you need anything, kind of thing. And so, it really helps to, validate the decision you made, and I think that's been good. And same at school, I think. Just really good people here that are on the staff, and they've been very open to some of the suggestions, some of the things that we're looking to change. And so I think it's been just a really good transition. But again, first year tends to be the easiest sometimes. So you want to continue to build on the honeymoon thing. If you
Sure.
maybe remember that from your wife. No.
Yep.
Um, but
Touche.
but it's continued to build on those things, and like I said, I'm big on relationships and getting to know people a little bit, and then letting them know me a little bit too. So I
And
think
that totally fits into a small town. I mean, I was going to say we're relatively small town, but no, Shell Lake is a small town, and it is a small-ish school district. But what do you think the biggest difference? And this isn't tell me something you didn't like about the last job. I just mean sorry, is it Glenview? I should have written that down.
Greenwood.
Greenwood. I'm way off on this stuff. Greenwood. What's the biggest difference as a superintendent? Obviously, you had an administrative role at your last job, so that a little bit different there. But in terms of the superintendent's job, two different schools, both small-ish school districts, what was the kind of a big difference between the two? Or really, there really wasn't that much of a difference?
I don't think it's significantly different. I think one of the things that when you're a larger district, you tend to have sort of some middle level management per se,
Sure.
where obviously you've got a principal, two principals, but then you also have a director of buildings and grounds. You have a business person. You have a food service. I mean, you have those middle level who are also managing staff below that. Where Greenwood, there really wasn't that. It was administration, and then down to the sort of the rank and file kind of
Mm.
level, which that's a challenge too. Where you're almost leading those departments in a quasi sort of way, where here you meet with the directors and it's all right, bus person. You're managing your area. I'm going to be kind of part of that, and we'll talk about how and what we may need to do differently. Where before it was like you had all that, and that's hard. I mean, that's a lot of juggling, and
Mm.
I think we're here in Shell Lake. We've got great directors at that level, and they've been good to work with. And we've talked about how do we do it better? How do we do it more efficiently? How do we better serve the kids that we have?
Do you look at like when the yearly scorecards come out, or I think that's what they're called, right? Scorecards
Yeah.
from DPI. Yeah, when those things come out, do you go and look at Greenwood and kind of secretly hope they're not doing as well? Because
Um,
see,
no, no, I would never do that. Would I look? Yes, but no, I've always looked at my role as an educator, whether it was in a classroom or a building level administration or a district level, is I will take it as far as we can go. And if I move on for whatever reason, I hope the next person takes it farther because that ultimately is better for kids. So it's not like, well, I hope they fail because it'll validate everything that I've ever
yeah,
done. No, I think if they take it to a higher level, that also validates what I've done because I've laid the foundation. I've created an environment and a culture
mm,
that can allow that to happen. So, do I celebrate that? Of course I do. I mean, why wouldn't I?
yeah.
Uh,
How would you describe your, I don't know, leadership style?
I guess I kind of view myself as a servant leader.
Mm.
Um, I, I I'm here to serve kids. I'm here to serve our staff. I'm here to serve our community. I look at my job is to try to make everyone else's job more effective, so they can be more effective and more efficient in what they're doing. And I think so. I want to develop relationships so we can have a frank conversation about what is happening or what isn't happening, and how do we go forward
Yeah.
from that.
How is staffing in Shell, like teachers, principals, and all these that you have kind of already kind of touched on and named? You can throw in coaches, just overall staffing. How is Shell like doing on staffing?
I well, if you're talking about are we fully staffed, the answer is
Yeah,
yes. So that's a good thing.
yeah,
And I think and that is one of the bigger challenges facing all districts now is finding good quality staff, whether it's at a teacher level or if it's at a custodial level. I mean, it's hard to find good folks.
yeah.
But
We seem to be asking a lot more from our teachers. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's certainly the perception. Is that unfair? And everything from, maybe we should be arming these teachers and now we have to do this. And then there's LGBTQ stuff. And I don't know what Shell Lake School District's policy on that. And if a child decides that they are going to identify as whatever, then I know there's some school districts, those stories came out a few months ago that are, well, we don't, necessarily tell the parents. There's just so much happening in schools. Is that a part of the reason that maybe teachers are just, I don't know if I want to do this anymore, or I don't know if I want to go into that field at all? Are these things playing a role in this, or just people just kind of don't want to be teachers anymore?
I think, as with most things, there are a lot of factors involved. I actually have an interesting chart in my office here, which shows way back in when public education started, what public education was expected to do, and it was a fairly short list. And you can see over the decades how much more that has grown in terms of, well, public education could take care of that. Public, you know what I mean? It's just sort of it keeps getting layered on, and some of it probably was a good addition, some of it maybe not, but it's there. And so I think there is that factor. I would suspect, and things, things have gotten more challenging. Certainly um, in terms of expectations, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I think we need to do everything we can to make sure that when kids leave Shell Lake, that they are um, able to go on to college if that's where they want to go on to get some additional technical training, or if they just want to go out in the world of work, that they have the requisite skills to be a good employee, to be able to contribute to society. So,
Mhm.
um, those are all of that
Mm.
requires a level of commitment. And so, I think, and I think, obviously, I know we don't probably want to go too political, but, certainly, the Act 10 thing certainly, really kind of
Sure, right. And you're not saying
really
for or
hammered
against
for the.
a Republican or a Democrat, but this had Act 10 had some positives that came from that,
Oh,
and it
absolutely.
certainly had some negatives that came from that. And we're
Right.
talking just from under the umbrella and perspective from a superintendent that had an effect on the school district,
Oh, absolutely.
and it's still having an effect.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think it's still rippling through. And again, I think, yeah, and I think you're right. There were some good things out of Act 10. I mean, I don't think you can say that was the worst thing ever. Um, and even some of the changes that were implemented probably could have happened negotiation wise versus sledgehammer wise. But again, we
Yeah,
can't we can't revisit that because
yeah. Can't
obviously that
unring the
wasn't.
bell on that one.
But sometimes it's you get more flies with honey than. But
Yeah.
and we've seen too with a number of students interested in going into education has gone down. If you check with the universities, the
Yeah.
number of students that are graduating with teaching degrees and heading out, that's a third of what it used to be. And so, how do we turn that back around? Because
Yeah.
at some point, you know, you you're going to have a hard time staffing, and that's what we see now too. Just an example from back when I was an elementary principal, so it's a few years ago now. Marshfield, good district, good sized town, 20,000 people.
Mm.
Um, we'd have an opening for say a third grade job. You'd have 40 or 50 applicants for that job. I mean, so you now, and I still keep in contact with superintendent in Marshfield. Last year they had a fifth grade job. They had like 8 applicants. So in 20 years, you go from 40 or 50 to like 8. And again, Marshfield, that's a good district,
Yeah.
good sized community. So the
Yeah.
pool has gotten pretty shallow.
And I'm hearing that in a lot of these things that kids wanted to be when they were growing up. When I was a kid, a lawyer, a cop, a teacher, a nurse. These are very common things, and all of these, believe it or not, lawyers too. All of these, it's same thing. Like there can't really fill some of these. And I should say, in terms of lawyer, I should specify more on uh, the state side of it.
Mhm.
DAs, ADAs, special prosecutors, stuff like that. Like nobody wants to really go into that. That's probably just due to the money, which is terrible. But
But it's a
so
fact.
law enforcement, they've been going through this for the last few years. It's getting everything you're describing right now is the same thing that law enforcement is going through. I think Mike Schaefer, Spooner CEO, they've been fortunate up until now, but nurses that harder to come by and people that are going into it, more people are leaving. Is this something that you're actually, it's on my radar. I'm paying attention, but I'm not overly concerned yet. And if you're not overly concerned yet in terms of being able to put up a job posting for an opening and actually get some qualified candidates, like more than one, when do you think you will be? When is this going to come to a head where it's in 5 years, 10 years from now, where we're saying, okay, we're just going to have to throw money at the problem and just start giving teachers $20,000 a year raises just to get people that want to apply? At what point are you concerned?
Well, I'm already concerned. Uh, I can tell you, Shell Lake, um, have had a couple of positions posted for over 2 years. No applicants. Again, specialty positions. Um, uh, um, Probably of the 421 school districts in Wisconsin, I would bet that there are probably over 300 of them, and I might be giving you a conservative number, that are currently have a teacher teaching who is not fully certified in the subject area that they are currently teaching. They are on like an emergency license, is what we used to call it.
I didn't even know that was a thing, to be honest.
We have one in Shell Lake, but there are very common. Some districts, especially smaller rural districts, again, might have 4 or 5 teachers who have a teaching degree, but maybe they were supposed to teach math, and we've got them teaching science, or which again, you can do that. I'm not saying that isn't possible. They can do a very good job with that, but as far as licensed, they're not fully licensed.
Sure.
That's happening more and more. And I think the other thing that's happening again, and again, I've had a little more experience with rural districts, is trying to find people. Spanish teachers, really hard to find. Tech ed teachers, really hard to find. High-level math classes, your calculus and that, really hard to find. High school English, really hard to find. And so those are positions that if you have somebody, you want to hang on to them because it might be challenging to replace them.
So what's the fix here?
Well, I don't think there's any one thing we're going to do that change everything, but I certainly think one of the things that a lot of districts are doing, and we've kind of started a little look at, can we start to work with some of our kids who maybe are interested? We need to maybe rekindle that interest in education among our students to say, is this something that you've considered? And there are some organizations. I think one of them is called Educators Rising, which is sort of a kind of a organization that's out there trying to promote kids looking at education as a career path. And again, not everyone's made to be a teacher either. So it's just
it's kind of again like all
those all the paperwork and you completed the coursework and everything else. Some people just aren't skilled in it.
It takes a special person, like all the ones that we just named, being a nurse and a cop and a lawyer. It's almost like a calling, right? I totally get that.
You have to have some intrinsic drive for that kind of work because you will burn out very quickly if you don't have that. Is
No Child Left Behind still a thing? And that's like tied to federal aid or something like that. That's still a thing, right?
Well, it's had a name change. It's now ESSA. It's ESSA, elementary, secondary school, something.
What?
But it's essentially the same. It just name change.
Is that the thing that was? This is a few years ago. That something about like teaching the tests or something. So this is like somehow tied to, isn't it federal aid or something along those lines?
Yeah, it's federal education policy.
Sure. And is that, I don't know, going well still, or is it, man, we really need to relook at that?
Well, we look at it, certainly, but it's not a driving factor in what we're doing.
Sure. And so how is funding? I don't know. So where does the Shell Lake School District receive its money? Obviously, like taxpayer dollars, but is that it?
State, the state aids, the general aid district, the district receives. So.
And how do you get more, or is it just every year it's the same? Please talk to me like I'm a third grader, because I'm completely ignorant on this. I don't know how the money part works. But when you look at your budget and go, boy, we could really use a little bit more. How do we get that? Or is it, no, it's unless there's a referendum. I think Spooner just had one. Unless there's a referendum, we have what we have, and that really doesn't change from year to year.
Well, and there is a lot of truth in that. What we have is what we have. We get state aid, and that's based on population count. It's also based on assessed value, equalized value of the whole school district. There's a formula for that. And then there is, which generates the tax revenue. So, we have a limit as to what we can raise as far as taxes, or that's the revenue limit. So that's a set number. So if we, and then the state backfills it. The last year, the last biennium, there was no new money put out. So you had the same amount of money for the last 2 years, 21, 22, 22, 23, as you did back in 1920. So you think about, and this is where schools start to lose ground. So there was no money brought on, but you probably gave your employees some type of a pay increase.
Typically, that's how it works.
Uh, you probably your health insurance
Probably went up.
probably went up. Gas prices definitely went up. Um, Electricity went up. Had a long winter this year. We might have exceeded our heat budget. You have all those things, but you have no more money coming in. So it's like, all right, we have the same pot of money. The costs all went up. All right, you can see where it
Yeah.
doesn't a lot to figure out that we're losing ground financially, uh, and the only way that changes is state decides to put more per pupil or raise the revenue limit. Those are things the
Mm.
state has the ability to work those levers. At the local level, the district can choose to go to the public and with an override referendum and ask for some additional funds.
Mm.
And again, it can be an override, which would be to exceed the revenue limit for operations, which is what Spooner has done, or district could go to a referendum for construction, which is what Shell Lake did
Yeah.
a few years ago when they added the addition on here. So those are the ways that the district can generate more revenue.
Well, Fitzy and I, so I do a weekly show on Tuesday with Barron County Sheriff Chris Fitzgerald. We call it Positive Tuesday, Ben and Fitzy. It's mostly positive. But sometimes, we talk about some, heavier things. But we were just discussing, because it was election day, about the money that went into the Supreme Court race. And it was like $45 million.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I said, I think there's like 420 school districts. And you just said 421. So, wow, I'm surprised I was that close on it. And I said, 45,420, that's like just over $100,000 a school district. Just give it to them. So, yeah, we're going to play, King for a Day or Queen for a Day, whatever that show was in the, 70s or something. So you get $100,000. It's not every year, but we just give you $100,000. What do you do with it?
Well, and this is, without wanting to sound ungrateful, but when you have a $10 million budget, $100,000 is almost like when you find some change in the couch. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I'm not trying to sound ungrateful, but $100,000, is not going to go very far.
Take all the teachers out, all the students out for lunch. There you go, done.
Yeah,
that's all we can do.
One of the things that happens within the budget too, where which is right now special education costs are only reimbursed at 30%, which means every year between $600,000 and $800,000, we have to take that out of the general budget and move it over to cover special ed costs. So that's a big now. That's a big number. Now that's a number we would be able to have flexibility with. Way back when special ed came in, back in the mid 70s, the state and federal government had promised to fully fund it. Never even gotten close, and so those costs keep going up. And then you don't control those costs either. You have a student who shows up that is visually impaired, and they need a one-to-one aid, and they need special technology. There's no money for that. That just comes out of, where, there's been some recent proposals to try to raise that reimbursement to 35% and then maybe to 50%, but that would provide a nice cushion for most districts, I would say.
Have you heard any discussion about that at the legislative level?
It's been talked about. There's Governor Evers has a budget proposal, and Dr. Underly has a budget proposal, and Equity and Funding has there's a lot of proposals out there, and none of them are gaining a whole lot of traction with the Assembly or the Senate, and so. I think there's been some discussion. I've talked to Senator Quinn a couple weeks ago, and we talked about some things. And there's talk, but
it's just talk right now.
Yeah. And so we need to see some action.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, and again, I don't know if you saw, there were a lot of referendums again around the state of Wisconsin.
Yep.
And again,
we're going to see a lot more of those.
And that's really what's happening. I think 80% of school districts in Wisconsin have been to referendum within the last 5 to 10 years.
Do you have any, as of right now, crystal ball looking ahead? It's anything in the next 5 years, or it's like, we don't know. Hopefully some other things get done, but as of right now, it doesn't seem like it.
It's too early to tell. Is it possible? Of course, but some of it's going to really depend is there going to be some movement in terms of from the state in terms of some more revenue?
Yeah.
If we receive, again, no increase or such a small increase for the next biennium, well, those costs haven't gone down. So we're going to continue to spin, and back in, we're going to continue to kind of, you can't operate at a deficit if you,
Well,
because
you can if
otherwise,
you're the government.
well, you pull your money out of fund balance. Well, no, but you have to then pull the money out of your fund balance. And so,
Okay.
and some districts have burned off all their fund balance.
Yeah.
Um, Shell Lake hasn't, and I would definitely recommend the board not going down that way, because those districts that have burned off the fund balance or have reduced it so far oftentimes have to short-term borrow to meet payroll in the summer, because there's no revenue coming in the summer. Well, that's
Yeah.
a slippery slope. You're borrowing money, paying interest on it to pay your people. That's not a good.
That's
not
not
really
good. That's not a
practice.
good, and I get it's a school district, but it's still a business, and that's not a good business model.
Well, see, the irony though is when people say run it like a business. You see, uh, you know,
Uh,
you wouldn't run your business that way, but you're
that's
telling us to run it that way.
right. So I've noticed though. So Wisconsin something is Wisconsin Institute of Law and Liberty. They have this thing where you can look at school districts by each school, and it's like their own report card kind of thing. I just happened to look at it, and I noticed that one of the things they have in there is like enrollment. And so I was looking in our area, and enrollment in Shell Lake seems to I can't remember if it's either steady or it's gone up a little. And there's some in our area that their enrollment's going down. So is that true that Shell Lakes is either maintaining or it's continuing to kind of go up a little? And if so, what would you attribute that to? Why is Shell Lake doing quote unquote well when it comes to enrollment?
I think it dipped a little bit. It was probably trending down, and I think COVID, some people went,
Yeah.
homeschool, and some of them didn't come back. But I think my understanding is pretty much anybody who had kind of sort of opted out for a virtual thing has come back now. So that may be a little bit,
Yep.
that you could, and sometimes, you know, we are a smaller school district, so I mean, some people do see that as attractive in terms of class sizes. Maybe we do have a good selection of electives and other educational opportunities for kids, and so I think people are able to sort of with open enrollment, they can shop around a little bit, where in the past you had your hometown team and that was it.
Is that a good thing? Do you like open enrollment? I mean, I can see how there could be goods and bads to that. But again,
Yeah,
I'm asking you not from a personal standpoint. I mean, from a superintendent standpoint, do you like this?
I don't think it's. I think most districts run fairly close for ins and outs.
Sure.
I mean, there are some where it's very dramatic, but I think Shell Lake, we're plus 40 or 50 probably for the ins to the outs, which is really a good number.
That's a
There
really
are
good
some
number.
that are looking at that the other side of the coin, where a lot more outs than ins, and but part of that for me is, okay, why is that happening? And it may not be because it's a reflective of the school district's performance. Sometimes it's convenience. Sometimes
Housing, that's a huge freaking thing,
housing.
man. If you can have houses, you don't
Yeah.
have students, you don't have teachers, you don't have anything.
Well, and I
Housing's a
think,
big thing.
and it's a big thing. And again, that's one of those. It's not. It's a rural America problem.
Yeah,
Affordable
it's not
housing.
exclusive to Shell Lake or a
Right.
Spooner or a Greenwood, or it's not exclusive to that. It's just rural. You're 100% right.
Yeah, and so and then if you can't afford to buy a house, are there quality rental options? And that's not always available
That's
either.
usually not
You know,
an option.
so you do end up, you know, uh, having your staff travel, which again leads to a problem. Sometimes people get tired of the commute, so they might start looking for something that shortens that commute. So again,
Yeah.
that kind of what weaves back into staffing as well.
If you had today, what are we in April? If April Todd, so today's Todd, could go back and tell September 1st, 2022 Todd one thing before going into the kids, or about then, when school starts, what would you tell yourself? What one piece of advice, or just a hey, heads up, buddy? What's one thing that you would say?
Boy, that's a tough question, I guess. Um, you know, I yeah, I don't know if I would change really anything how I've started, and how I've approached things. Um, I, I haven't stepped in anything yet, so I guess that's a good thing. Yeah.
Sure.
But I think it comes back to you got to be who you are,
Mm,
and you stay true to what you believe, and that's what you do. And I think I came in, I'm Todd Felhofer, and that's how I conduct myself in a certain way, and I believe a certain thing. And I think when you do that, you get caught. You don't want to get caught trying to pretend to be something,
right.
um, because that can turn out kind of badly.
Yeah.
Um, so no, I'm very happy with how the transition to Shell Lake went. I'm very pleased with some of the things that we've been able to get started here, and I think it's been everything I had hoped it would be.
Uh, Two more things I just quickly wrote down because we're pretty much up against our time right now. But um, anytime you're a face of something or in a leadership role, you're bound to get, I refer to it as emotion mail. Others refer to it as hate mail. Um, Without getting into specifics, what kind of emotion mail do you receive?
Well, usually at the superintendent level, often, it might be, complaints about a teacher. At least, I mean, I'm
Sure.
not saying I'm having
Nope,
that
nope,
now,
I
but
totally
I'm
get it. Yep.
speaking in the more
That's what we're
general.
looking for is yeah.
Sometimes, it's that. Sometimes it might be, an issue with bullying her or harassing, which, obviously is very serious. And those have really been the ones I've had the most.
You don't get any that say, how come you didn't close the school down? Or then right after that email, it's the, why did you keep the school open?
No,
And
haven't really
it's
got
like
those.
this, really?
No, well,
That's fun.
I've been. I guess.
You make all the right calls. See?
Well,
Or they just don't have your email address.
yeah.
Uh, all right.
You know, and those, those the closure ones, you have to just center yourself on the fact that somebody's not going to be happy,
Yeah.
and and I think that's part of that's part of leadership. I have a quote that's actually hanging on the bookcase across the way from my desk, and it says, "If you want to make everyone happy, don't be a leader. Sell ice cream." And so I look at that every so often, and with the understanding that, yep, I had to make a decision, or we're going away, and there are going to be some people that are
Comes
going to
with the
not.
gig, man.
But if you make the decision based on the right things,
For the right reasons.
for the right reason,
Right.
you can always go back and stand on that. It's like the school closure thing. When it says, you know, severe storm warning, and they list all the bad things that could happen, or how do you go? I know
Uh,
better, and we're just going to go it, and then something happens, and people go, did you not read that? And you're like, well, yeah, I did, but I didn't think it would be that bad. Well, that's not a defensible position.
Right.
And I had that happen a few years ago at Greenwood. They hyped it. Oh, big storm. Oh, going to be bad. All right, so we closed the night before. By about 8 o'clock, still no snow on the ground. At 9 o'clock, there was no snow on the ground.
Oh, and you're thinking, oh boy.
And I thought, we're going to
Come
take some
on,
hits
snow.
tomorrow. No one called. And even if they did, it would have been, you know what? Hey, everyone's safe.
Right.
Go back to everyone's safe.
Do you eat school lunches or do you bring your own?
Pardon?
Do you eat school lunches or do you bring your own?
I rarely even eat. I'll run home once in a while.
Okay. All right. Is there anything else that you wanted to make sure that we talked about that we didn't get a chance to?
Not really. I just kind of figured we were just going to, pinball around, so that's okay.
Which is totally what we did. So I don't know if there's anything that you thought of that, looking at next year, anything kind of in the works that a program or anything coming up that you're it's been a year under your belt now? Well, not quite, but the school year anyway is almost over. Is there now, okay, I've gotten to know a lot of people. I've gotten to learn this in the community and the kids and the teachers and the principals and et cetera. Now I want to do a couple things. Do you have any of those things in mind?
I think one of the things, and we've talked about this at the board level too, it's called redefining ready. And it's kind of looking at another way to measure how are we doing. Because we know test scores are one thing, but they're not everything. Mm-hmm. And, are there some other metrics that we can use to say, yeah, we're doing okay here? And again, it fits more into the line. Obviously, when you use things like ACT tests, well, that's skewed very much to probably your college-bound kids. That's okay, good for them, and go. And we want them to have that opportunity to be successful. But we have a lot of kids that aren't going to four-year university; they're going someplace else. But what can we do to measure that we've prepared them to be successful down that path, other than handing them a diploma when they walk across the stage and going, well, you're ready.
Right.
Should we have some things that we can say, I think we might be able to say they are ready. And so that, we're going to just start working on, there's some districts that are a little further along on looking at this, but it's sort of more of an internal measurement, but, there's a framework to work within. And so, really trying to look at, again, is there some more data that we can point to say, we're on the right path. We're doing the right thing.
Excellent idea. Yeah, are more people, from your understanding, and this wouldn't be specific to Shell Lake, but in your time, are more or fewer people going straight from graduating to a four-year university? So we're excluding tech schools and stuff, but I mean, in your knowledge, and maybe you see reports or studies on this stuff, is it going up, down, or staying the same over the last 10, 15 years?
I think it's probably trending down to four-year colleges.
That makes sense.
And part of it is cost. I mean, I think people are not looking to be, $100,000, $200,000 in debt when they start off their lives. So I think you're seeing some of that work down. And again, I've been around a long time. And I think back to when I was in high school, which was the 70s. It was almost like if you weren't going to college, you probably weren't going to be all that successful. I mean, there was that mindset, and I think, looking back now, that was, wow, we sent a lot of kids to college that shouldn't have been there. And then we wondered why they washed out. I think we're doing a much better job now, and I think the tech schools have pivoted tremendously, and they're way ahead on this thing, is let's bring kids in and adults and train them to do the job and skip all that other time and energy and money and get them trained and working. And I think that's where we're seeing a better shift. And I think, like I said, I think the tech colleges are way ahead on this.
That's where it's at, man. That's my jam. Like one of my daughters, she's going to tech school, did decide not, then she still may end up going to college and transfer some things, but she's starting there for, can live at home, the cost aspect, get an actual certification in something, and then could use that if she wants to go to either further or later. But that's kind of where she is. And there are two other kids that are still here in the house, that same thing. They're thinking of tech school right away. Now, not banging on colleges. Some things you have to go to college for, or a typical four-year degree. Totally understand it. But yeah, it used to be like tech school is for the the dumb kids. Seriously, that's just it was. Oh, you went to tech school. That's where you're going when you graduate. Now, like nobody says that anymore.
Well, and like I said, I think we really sent some kids on the wrong path for many years, and the last 10, 15, I think we're turning. And getting better at that, and I think redefining ready fits into that idea. I think we really amped up our youth apprenticeship program here, getting more kids, giving them credit for the work that they're doing outside of school.
I think my brother is a part of that. I think, you know what? I better double check that before I say that. I think he is. He does youth mentorship, something like that, for someone down there in Shell Lake. I don't know if it's a school.
So we're I think, and again, what we're trying to do is make sure that we're addressing the needs of all students.
That's brilliant, because you're right. Because before it seemed like maybe that was just a perception, or maybe it is reality that it was. This is just these the path to get you to college. We'll teach everything here, but the next step is college, kind of like we were talking before. Teacher, principal, superintendent. That's not for everybody, man. Some people, I just want to be a teacher the rest of my career. That's all. I love doing this. I don't want to be in an administrative role. So why are we kind of really, I wouldn't say forcing, but strongly encouraging and setting them up to go to a 4-year college when maybe that's not your jam? It's okay. There's a lot of other options out there.
My 4 kids, two have graduated from college, 2 haven't.
There you go. Todd, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on. We'll have you back on in the, fall time. Kind of see, looking at the next school year. Is there snow days? How many up to? Is there going to be any extended summer?
Nope, we're good. We have,
so far,
of the number of hours, that we have, the length of our day and the number of days that we have provided with enough hours to meet the requirements of the DPI. So, if we, I'm thinking we're good now, but
but it's only April 6th. We'll see.
Have this conversation after this, but we will have enough hours to meet the requirement for the year. So
awesome. All right. Thank you so much for jumping on.
Thank you.
All right. Special thank you to Lake School District Superintendent Todd Felhofer for joining us today. I'll see you on Tuesday when Barron County Sheriff Chris Fitzgerald and I'll be back for our latest episode of Positive Tuesday with Ben and Fitzy. So until then, have a wonderful weekend. Thank you for watching, and as always, have a blessed day.